This series is all about everyday words, phrases and sayings, and how they got here, how they evolved over the centuries, from the very first grunts to grammar, from jargon to technobabble.
Hey now, say now, let's get away now, away with words. Words like we say each and every day, away with words. What's in the name? What do you say? So many words at the end of the day. I talk, you talk, they talk, we all talk. Away with words. Away with words. Away.
I'm at Holcombe Beach in North Norfolk, where the lovely clean sand is perfect for drawing. Ancient cave paintings from France show that our ancestors drew pictures to represent their experiences. Over thousands of years, these pictures developed into the letters of the alphabet we use today.
Well, letters are one thing, but how on earth did we get words? The dictionary describes a word as a meaningful sound or combination of sounds or its representation in writing. And my friend here, Mugwump, sit down, Mugwump, he can make a sound. Go on, make a sound. Ruff, huff, huff. All right, I'm stupid. Well, he can make a sound, but it's not particularly meaningful to us or interesting. Come on, Mugwump, let's go and have a run on the beach. Here you go. Off you go.
A dog's communication skills are limited, but it can still convey a basic range of messages.
For example, a dog can show you he's pleased to see you, and he can say an amazing amount with his eyes. Don't you? What? You're kidding. You don't want me to run around all over there again, do you? This is Mugwump. His name comes from an American politician's slang word for someone who sits on the fence. Apparently because his mug is facing one way and his wump is facing the other. I don't think there's an awful lot in that, actually. What do you reckon we should do? You want to go running down there again? Bored? Well, it suits me.
Humans, on the other hand, have developed a far more complex system of language.
For example, take Mugwump. Is he a dog, a hound, a mutt, man's best friend? I hardly think so. Or simply just another member of the genus Canidae.
All these phrases refer to the dog, but use different words to do so. Where's he gone now?
Come on, boy. There. I know you're worn out. It's been a tough day. I can see why they call you Mugwump. Your mug face is one way and the wump the other. Oh, well.
In the same way that the English have many words for dog, the Aborigines have 14 words for hole, and the Eskimos have umpteen words for snow. Language expands and contracts to fit the needs of the people using it. But how did all this language get regulated? The simple answer is the printed word.
This is Gerald's printing works in Norwich. These days, it's hard to imagine a world without the printed word. No newspapers, no books, no posters. Well, before Johann Gutenberg found another use for an old wine press in the mid-15th century, the printed word was very rare indeed. Everything had to be handwritten. I'm on my way to Gerald's Museum of Printing to have a look at some of the earlier techniques.
As far as printing goes, Europeans were relatively late starters.
People in the Far East had been using printing techniques involving movable type for thousands of years. They cut figures into wood blocks and set them in sand. Gutenberg and the other early printers replaced the wood with lead. They took the new lead type and firmly placed it on a machine that resembled a wine press. The type was then inked, the paper laid, and pressed into position. I wonder if there's a velvet glove press. Silly idea.
The crucial difference between Gutenberg's press and its Far Eastern predecessor was that Gutenberg had only 26 letters of the alphabet. The hundreds of Chinese pictograms were nowhere near as flexible.
Actually, taking a pull as far as it can lift.
Like my first kiss.
As the old printer's saying goes, with my 26 soldiers of lead, I have conquered the world. This is the typesetting room. This is a typeface. A typeface. Typos in Greek means struck, driven or moulded. And since moulds are cast, when a type is cast, it can be used to run off many, many copies, rather like a jobbing actor who is said to be typecast. The letters P and Q are very difficult to tell apart, especially when they're back to front, and so, for that matter, are the letters B and D. But for some reason, the saying, mind your P's and Q's, has stuck as meaning, take care. And speaking of taking care, this looks a tricky little device with attitude.
Most typefaces are named after the printers who designed them. This is Gill Sans, named after Eric Gill, who also designed another typeface called Joanna, named after his daughter. But how do parents choose the names for their children?
The most popular names for new babies last year was Sophie and Jessica for girls, and Jack and Daniel for boys. But what about this year? I've popped into the Attleborough Mother and Baby Clinic to ask the mums about their children's names.
Annabelle, how did you set about choosing your baby's name?
Well, we were thinking about her name this time last year when we first found we were expecting her. We found Helena, and we just thought it was such a beautiful name.
Yes.
And my second name is Elizabeth, so we put Helena Adelaide Elizabeth, and we thought they looked quite nice together and rather unusual.
What about Alicia down there?
Alicia.
What's your other name, Alicia?
Poppy.
Oh, Poppy, that's a lovely
Alicia
name.
Poppy.
What's her name?
His name's Caleb.
Oh, Key.
Caleb, yeah.
Caleb?
Yeah.
What made you choose Caleb?
I'm a Christian and I go to chapel and it's just a Bible name. It's the Bible, yeah. So that's why we chose it.
Your little boy, what's his name?
He's Harvey.
Harvey, eh? So, what do you think of it so far, Harvey?
I don't know. I just learnt this from a dog. Babies make word-like sounds at around 12 months, and words with meaning at around 18 months. Often mama and dada are the first words, because they are the easiest to say.
The rapid development of language between the ages of 2 and 6 is one of the most staggering things about human development, and it's still not fully understood.
A bit like me.
Rat? No, it's a rabbit. Rabbit. Bus. Bye-bye. These days, we all have at least two names, a forename and a surname. But it wasn't always so. Surnames only became a necessity when the population grew and became more mobile. How surnames came about seems to follow four basic rules. Rule 1, what you do. Names like Baker, Cooper, Fletcher, Thatcher and Farmer all come from occupations. Soon, John the Baker would be shortened to just John Baker, especially if the trade was passed down from father to son. Rule 2, where you're from. Names like Holland, Field, Ford and hill are all places or geographical features. Rule 3, what you look like. As we all know, people can be very blunt. And if you did something like this and looked like this, I could easily have ended up being called John Pratt. But more generally, if your hair was brown, you'd be called John Brown, and if you were quite tall, you might end up being called John Long. I once knew a girl called Henrietta Fish. Rule 4, your past. If you were very lazy, you'd probably be called John Go-to-Bed or Eric Idle. But if you were highly thought of, you might be called John Well-Beloved. If you'd like to find out something more about your surname, why not join me after the break, when I'll be going to meet someone whose name can be traced back for over 1,000 years. Don't go changing. People have always been fascinated by their family history and working out who's who in their family trees. Royalty, or people who aspire to be royal, often use family trees to prove their right to the throne. A link to a royal court could be very lucrative. You might even wind up being a king or a queen. Researchers into family history mainly use church records, births, deaths and marriages, but you can also use government census information which can tell you who lived in what house, when, where and for how long. But of course the first major documentation was the Domesday Book, ordered by William the Conqueror, probably to find out what it was indeed he'd conquered. A mention in the Domesday Book... Hi, Verily. A mention in the Domesday Book must be equivalent to an American family tracing back their ancestors to the Mayflower. But if you want to know more about family trees, the person to ask lives just here. In fact, she just cycled through. I better hurry up. Verily! This is Verily Anderson. Verily is a member of the Gurneys, a famous Norfolk family that can be traced back to Norman times. Verily has done extensive research and written 2 books about her family, and people write to her from all over the world for advice on their family trees. This is your family tree here, isn't it?
Well, that's when I worked out of a Gurney cousin. My mother was a Gurney.
Were the Gurneys then Normans?
Yes, that's after the place. It's a place called Gurney. Gourney. They spelt it like that then. And it means, I think, a muddy puddle.
Oh, well, that's probably why they moved here.
Yes, I think so.
How did you get your own name, Verily?
That was my father again. He was a parson, and it was before crossword puzzles, but he loved words and names, and he decided that his children must have 6 letters and an R and an L, because his name was Rosalind, my mother's name was Rachel. I got stuck with the adverb, verily. But being a parson, of course, he did say it rather often. Verily, verily, I say unto you.
The thing about family trees to me is that they're upside down. It's more like the roots that come up to the main
yeah, it ought to be
stem,
the other way up, wouldn't it? There's one in Hatfield House, which is done like a tree of Queen Elizabeth I, and it traces her back to Adam and Eve.
Well, that's probably doubtful. There's so many Norfolk names here. I mean, Bartlett and Swanton, isn't it?
Yes.
And Kett.
Yes.
What a team, what a team. Not everyone's family is as famous as Verily's, but all of us have kith and kin that go back just as far and even further. Perhaps that's why there are so many sayings and phrases to do with family and class. Kith and kin are words that come from the Old English. Kith meaning knowledge, and kin, meaning family. In other words, people you know and people you're related to. The black sheep of the family is so called because black sheep were considered less valuable because their wool couldn't be dyed. But apart from family squabbles, it is the divide between rich and poor that is as old as the hills. Hoi polloi is Greek for multitude. Hoity-toity probably comes from the French haute tote, meaning high roof, somewhere with a high roof where, no doubt, rich people lived. And snob is 18th century word for cobbler or shoemaker. In Cambridge, it became slang for somebody who lived in the town, somebody not part of the university. So if a townsperson put on airs and graces, the university people would call them a snob. But there's nothing snobby about the street names of Norwich. They're full of history.
With the bronze line and please note.
Yes, welcome to Norwich, a fine city. You can learn a lot from an open-top bus tour. Everything from Kett's Rebellion to Elizabeth Fry, the world-famous nurse. The Frys married into the Gurneys, and so did the Berkeleys. Trading has gone on in Norwich since Anglo-Saxon times. But not all streets of Norwich are named after castles, public houses, or mental institutions. Cities are constantly evolving, and there must be some policy for naming new streets.
Here we are in Norwich City Hall, and I'm with Steve Thompson, whose responsibility it is to name new streets. What's the policy, Steve?
Policy basically is to try and maintain an historical link with the area. We try and maintain themes throughout. So, for instance, we've got Bishy Barnaby Way.
Bishy Barnaby?
Bishy Barnaby Way, which is an Old Norfolk word for a ladybird. On from Bishy Barnaby Way, you have Dodderman Way, again, an Old Norfolk word for a snail.
A Dodderman?
A Dodderman.
Well, can we have a look at some of these wonderful old plans?
Yes, certainly.
I've always wondered about Opie Street, where that came from.
That was named after Amelia Opie, who was married to John Opie, who was one of Norwich's literary celebrities way back in the 1700s. I think nearly every mayor has got his name into the town somewhere, providing they have died. We do have a policy of not naming anything after the living.
At one time, they said that Norwich had, a pub for every day of the year and a church for every week.
Yes, that's right, yes. You're looking on the old plans here, you've got the White Lion, you've got the Buff Coat, you've got the Golden Ball, you've got the Rising Sun.
The Rising Sun?
Yes.
Well, there is a house in Norwich, boy, they call the Rising Sun. That's obviously a very ubiquitous pub name, isn't it?
Yes, oh yes.
Well, I tell you what, as fine as these old maps are, I think what we really need is a bird's eye view.
But first, I've got to help blow up this balloon with a little hot air.
To blow hot and cold comes from Aesop's fable about a satyr and a traveller eating together on a cold day. The traveller blew on his hands to warm them up and blew on his soup to make it cool. And the satyr threw him out because he was using the same air to blow hot and to blow cold. The saying has later come to mean hypocrisy or even indecision. It's got some tug on it, hasn't it? Oh. Are we supposed to let it out, are we?
Have we got any choice?
No, I don't think we have.
Okay, are we all on board? Everybody ready?
There's a thought.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Well, it's like travelling on air, walking on air. We're going up as fast as a kind of hotel elevator. Oh look, we've got company. There's the cathedral and there's the market with the city hall right by it. It looks so tiny. It reminds me of my model railway. In fact, it looks rather like Stephen Thompson's lovely maps. Well, apart from the hot air, the weather is the most important part of ballooning. And as we all know, the English are obsessed by it, and there's lots of sayings to do with it. For example, raining cats and dogs. Probably been around since 1700 and something, but the origin is probably lost, but there's an unpleasant possibility that it was to do with the rather poor drainage, and a terrific downpour might, release lots of debris, garbage, and even dead animals, so that's rather unpleasant. It really means a heavy downpour when it's washing out dead cats and dogs. To steal someone's thunder originated in the early 18th century in Theatreland. A critic and playwright called John Dennis invented a thunder machine to go with his play, Pierce and Virginia. Well, the play flopped, but a week later, when John Dennis attended a performance of Macbeth, he heard his same thunder machine, which was just a piece of tin, which he rattled. And he was so upset, he exclaimed, "They steal my thunder!" What a perfect example. That radio just stole my thunder.
We'd like to, with your permission, fly through between 1,500 and 2,000 feet, Evan? Yeah, that's correct.
The expression cloud nine comes from the US Weather Bureau. Apparently cloud nine, level of cloud, is the highest you can go, so it came to mean blissfully happy to be on cloud nine. It's rather like the feeling I've got now. It's really wonderful up here. It's so peaceful. If you think about it, for all the trees and all the houses you can see from up here, there's probably a word for every one of them. Yeah. It's just telegraph poles, isn't it? It's not electric current there. Right. So until next time, from Away with Words, up, up and away, farewell.
Hey now, say now, let's get away now, away with words. Words like we say each and every day, away with words. What's in a name? What do you say? So many words at the end of the day. I talk, you talk, they talk, we all talk, away with words. Away with words, away.
Whoa! And that's another well-known expression, down to earth.